Kind of funny, but what happens when you die says a lot about what's happening during life. You've probably heard of near-death experiences. Let's take a look at not only what happens to you when you die, but what that means about life itself. The Essence of Reality explores how the psyche which you are creates the reality you encounter. Voila! You found the essence of reality. We explore consciousness here, as in the nature of your real being, how life actually works. Common paradigms like religion and science simply don't describe experienced reality. Worse yet, if you believe in them, they actually hide life's real flow. You create your life's qualities. No God does. No external power source does. You do. If you want to see how, listen with an open mind and come back again. We've got a lot to cover. This issue looks at consciousness with a focus on near-death experiences. Recognizing the nature of your being, as I often emphasize here, requires getting rid of a wide array of ideas you hold that define you and the world around you. At the core of your being is consciousness itself. You engage a reality as an apparent self perceiving an external world around you. That reality isn't random or manifested by external forces, but contains meaning, reflective of your own nature. But you wouldn't know that based on common thinking. Much of the Western worldview projects essence to the physical realm, ignoring or trivializing the conscious self that engages it. Particularly with the emergence of science in our techno-savvy world, we tend to attribute value and significance to major collectives, things out there, governments, corporations, celebrities, things in the news. We got used to that, to projecting importance outward, already as kids, seeing parents and older siblings and relatives, later on teachers and bosses, as more authoritative, more prominent than we ourselves. But in actuality, the most important aspect to your life is you, the self, along with the fulfillment of your intent, including health and accomplishment and joy. Many aspects of life I focus on here emphasize consciousness as your core nature. None, though, are more blatantly obvious in highlighting consciousness as the basis of your being than near-death experiences. Fairly often, in traumatic circumstances, people die in clinical terms, heart stoppage and such, but are revived through medical efforts. Many of these, having gone through out-of-body episodes, report a particular set of effects that clearly indicate the metaphysical nature of our being. Let's take a look at NDEs, as they're called. Tom Nehrer here, Exploring Consciousness. Insights here add to my website, my books, and hundreds of talks I've given to open-minded groups. From a mystic experience years ago through my long inner journey, I've come to see the oneness of things. You are connected to life, real events and relationships, not separate and apart as science and religion would imply. Aware of that connection, you can improve real life in all ways by finding and changing inner roots to outer problems. I call this clear awareness, bypassing beliefs to clearly see how life works. Part of growing toward this enhanced clarity of perception is coming to see life as based fundamentally on consciousness, not the material universe. Science, one key paradigm underlying Western thinking, pictures your own level of consciousness as a result of complex brain function, kind of like a computer. If that were the case, death and the essential cessation of brain function would bring about a rapid, complete cessation of awareness and an end to the perceived self. But quite often people are revived from physical death. They often report a series of experiences not felt as hallucinatory or dreamlike, but very, very real. Their reports are consistent across cultural divides, and includes some combination of about 10 different elements. One is a buzzing or ringing sound accompanied by a realization that, whoops, you're dead. Many then refocus out of the body, often rising up and floating in effect above their failing bodies. Of these, many can and do describe in detail efforts that are made to resuscitate them. Some report themselves at this point as an energy-based, spiritual sort of being, not the flesh and blood version they see from above. A third vivid experience is an overwhelming sense of peace, free of pain, which, of course, they may have felt rather intensely right before that. Often following that comes a rapid passage through a tunnel or dark space towards a bright light, or alternately a rising up into the heavens such that the earth is perceived below as from space. Many then encounter others, often loved ones who have previously passed, friends maybe, sometimes even relatives or ancestors they had never met or even known of. Often at this point a light source will appear and grow in intensity to extremely bright, bringing with it an overwhelming sense of love and acceptance. Accompanying this bright light comes a review of life events with a focus on what was learned, whether tasks are finished or as yet undone. And then comes either notification that the person must go back or a question to that effect, whether the newly deceased wants to return to life or not, whether things remain yet to be done. Wrapped in this glow of love and acceptance, many are mixed in feeling whether or not to return to life and its issues. Of course, the only reports available are from those who did opt to return. So in NDEs, the disembodied consciousness returns to the body and subsequently reports the episode. NDEs in a time of rapid medical response have become rather common, and the points reported are very consistent. So what does one make of this? Quite clearly, one conclusion exists based on repeated evidence. The conscious self at death exits the body, it survives death in some cohesive nature, albeit not physical, following a sort of reorientation phase, often smoothed and aided by familiar loved ones. That self-essence evaluates the complex meaning woven into the waning lifetime, but does so in a context of love, acceptance, and meaning, not external punishment and judgment. Beyond that, what may happen when return to the body isn't possible or chosen. Those consequences exceed evidence of NDEs, but survival of the self is unavoidably indicated. Not surprisingly, science in particular, and even religion, that is Christianity, both have problems with NDE evidence. Neither likes to have its core tenets exposed as invalid. Christianity wants to think that the bright light is their imagined God, come to judge you or punish your sins. But that's never the commentary of those who have experienced NDEs. Real repeated evidence outweighs archaic conjecture. Science, by virtue of its core nature, can only regard the material world. It will always find great difficulty regarding non-tangible facets of reality, like a disembodied consciousness floating around observing things without eyes to peer through and a brain to process data. So skeptics of NDEs abound. Science has no answer other than to call NDEs untestable. And pseudo-skeptics simply refute NDEs without any real counter-evidence to support their prefabricated conclusions. Both theorize all sorts of ideas to repudiate the obvious. Common conjecture is that the brain fabricates such hallucinations as it ceases to function. Equally unfounded is the argument that the brain-based mind becomes disoriented when short of oxygen or faced with death. But NDE reports are always very real experiences by those who have them, not delusions, dreamlike mixtures of oddball symbols or confusing jumbles of disorientation. They're consistent in content and common across cultures. Near-death experiences are obvious indications that your consciousness survives death. Any other explanation has been concocted to fit scientific or religious belief structures. Seeing life clearly without the interference of science and religion, you'll conclude the obvious. Consciousness is the basis of your being. Just take NDEs as they're reported. Confirmation that you exist, in essence, over and above the physical framework. See you later. Lots more to look at. The most important aspect to your life is you, the self. Fairly often, in traumatic circumstances, people die, but are revived through medical efforts. Many of these, having gone through out-of-body episodes, report a particular set of effects that clearly indicate the metaphysical nature of our being. The buzzing or ringing sound, often rising up and floating, an overwhelming sense of peace, free of pain, a passage through a tunnel or dark space towards a bright light, and encounter others, often loved ones who have previously passed. A light source will appear and grow in intensity to extremely bright. A review of life events with a focus on what was learned. Notification that the person must go back, or a question to that effect. Christianity wants to think that the bright light is their imagined God, come to judge you or punish your sins. But that's never the commentary of those who have experienced NDEs. Science will always find great difficulty regarding non-tangible facets of reality, like a disembodied consciousness floating around. Skeptics simply refute NDEs without any real counter-evidence to support their prefabricated conclusions. NDEs are always very real experiences, consistent in content and common across cultures. The survival of the self is unavoidably indicated. Seeing life clearly without the interference of science or religion, you'll conclude the obvious. Consciousness is the basis of your being.